Hi, welcome back to Tom's Hit Parade. I know I have been showing probably more love for the CD format lately in this YouTube channel than for vinyl records. But ever since I rebooted this channel a couple months ago and have started enjoying vinyl a little bit more, I've wondered a few times just how many vinyl records do I have and where do they all come from? And I mean, I know where they all came from. It's not like I walked into my room one day and looked and was like, oh boy, records. But how many of them came from which source is basically what I'm wondering. So I decided to sit down right over there a few days ago and count my vinyl records. To my surprise, I have, turns out I have about 165 records. That's vinyl LPs. I've got probably a half dozen 12-inch singles and some 45s and other miscellaneous items in there. And I was surprised and amazed and kind of humbled that I got more than half of those records for free from the generosity of family mostly. And I'm also admittedly a little bit ashamed that I have not been exploring them more in the last year that I have had my new turntable set up. So I thought I would give you a brief little tour of my vinyl collection, the more interesting and meaningful items in there. And also just give you a little bit of a history of my vinyl records. My collection started out very small and grew very slowly, as most people's probably do. This picture I'm showing you now is from a grainy camcorder video that I took back in 1995 in the last house that we used to live in. My record collection had been about that small for quite a while and would stay that size until probably 2006. At that point, I obtained the rest of the probably dozen and a half records from my parents' collection. We did a big house cleaning, garage cleaning one day, and also right about that same time, probably a year later, there was a yard sale at a house a few miles down the road. And we're not usually the yard sale, garage sale kind of crowd, but my brother wanted to see the inside of that house, and that was basically the reason we stopped there. And we're walking around there, and I see a stack of about a dozen vinyl records, and turned to the guy who was running the sale and said, well, how much do you want for those records? How much you want to give me? Oh, $5? Okay. So I brought home about a dozen records. These are mostly 80s stuff like Lionel Richie, Air Supply, Phil Collins, the Eagles, that kind of stuff. So yeah, my collection started getting bigger at that point. And this next picture is from about 2011, shortly after we remodeled my bedroom. This picture includes that yard sale haul and my parents' records. But after that, my collection really started to grow kind of rapidly. When my sister passed away in 2012, the only thing that I wanted of hers was her CD collection. And it took a couple of years, but my brother-in-law finally brought me her CD collection and, to my surprise, his and her combined vinyl collection. And I mean, we're talking just the vinyl was probably 8 of those cubic foot size moving boxes full. And it was unfortunately stored in less than optimal condition, and so a lot of the records were in very poor shape. I ended up keeping about 75 of those though, and incorporated those into my collection. And just last summer, we went down to my aunt and uncle's place and spent the weekend, and they were actually, they knew of my love for music, and they were actually paring down their own record and CD collection, and so I came home with about 25 of their old records. So yeah, my vinyl collection has grown by leaps and bounds there in the last few years, more than doubled. I've got just 100 records in just those 2 acquisitions. So now, to be honest, vinyl will probably never supersede CD as my format of choice, but I am appreciating it more and more as the weeks go on, and my turntable here will get more use, I'm sure of it. So, but yeah, for now I thought I would give you a brief little tour, hopefully brief little tour of my the more meaningful records in my vinyl collection. So let's take it away to Tom. Thanks, Tom. I like him. Anyway, so this is my vinyl record collection here. Just go through a few of the highlights, the more meaningful albums that I have. Now this one, the Association, and then along comes the Association. And this has a lot of sentimental value because my mother was neighbors and schoolmates with Terry Kirkman, who's a founding member of the Association. And back in the day, he autographed this for her personally. So yeah, it's very much of a keepsake for me. Oh, and then Pearl Bailey. This was in my brother-in-law's and sister's collection. I love her. She's got so much. She had so much spunk. This was one of the first ones I listened to from the collection. We got Big Brother and the Holding Company, Cheap Thrills. This was in my brother-in-law's and sister's collection as well. And then we have, oh, you don't get to see this one for another week or so. And then in my brother-in-law's collection was the first album by Petula Clark. And I've been a Petula Clark fan since before I got this record. But since this was basically starting my collection, I decided I had to keep going. So I got her second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth albums. So actually these might not be in consecutive actual order, but I have 9 of her albums. In my opinion, you can never have too much Petula Clark. And I got some Crosby, Stills and Nash, their first album, I believe. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, Marrakesh Express, etc. It's in a nice gatefold here. And one of my sister's favorite bands was the Eagles. So, but I think all 3 of these were actually from that yard sale. She had a bunch of the Eagles on CD, but I don't know. I can't remember if any of these were in her vinyl collection. But yeah, Hotel California and her greatest hits 1 and 2. And this one, it was in my folks collection, but it may have belonged to her before that. The Best of Herman's Hermits. And this is another one that is in a gatefold. You've got Night and Day by Joe Jackson. This is one of his most successful albums. This has his big singles, Steppin' Out and Breaking Us in Two. It's a fantastic album. And another classic here, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John. And this is actually in very good shape. And it's a double gatefold. So yeah, very happy to have this one. Now this one was from my aunt and uncle's collection, and I didn't realize what a gem I had on my hands until I happened to show it to a friend of mine who owns a local record store. It is If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears by the Mamas and the Papas, and you'll notice it's showing the toilet in the picture, in the cover picture, which was considered very indecent at the time. So after this first edition, they had a sticker, either a physical sticker or a block of text or whatever covering up the toilet because it was indecent. So don't get too jealous though, because you can see the cover is in questionable shape. It's got some tears on it, especially here in the middle. And the record is in fair condition. I actually have not put it on yet to see if it skips at all or not, but I am definitely hanging on to this. This is a treasure, even if it isn't terribly valuable. And then one of the classics, Johnny Mathis's Greatest Hits. Lionel Richie's classic Can't Slow Down. And this one has a vertical gatefold. Then we have the Rolling Stones, Flowers. This was in my brother-in-law's collection, and again, the jacket's not in terribly great shape, and the record is in so-so condition. And as you can see, somebody took the liberty of enhancing the artwork, I guess you'd say. So, yeah, it's not in great shape, but on a Ruby Tuesday, Let's Spend the Night Together. Mother's Little Helper. You know, I've got to put this on as soon as I finish filming this video. Got some Linda Ronstadt. And Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels, Sock It To Me. This was in my aunt and uncle's collection as well. And my aunt and uncle had a few Sinatra albums in their collection. I've never been huge on Sinatra, but hey, I don't mind having his albums at all. Got a few of them here, Sinatra and Basie. It's got a gatefold here. Nice gatefold on this one. And this one is an absolute classic. If you haven't heard it, even if you don't care much for Sinatra, you've got to hear it. Francis Albert Sinatra and Antonio Carlos Jobim, Sinatra's foray into Brazilian music. It's a fantastic album. And then Sinatra, conducted by Nelson Riddle. And again, it's got a nice gatefold here. And then this is one of the more curious entries in my collection. Ogden's Nut Gone Flake by the Small Faces, and you can see it's a circular record sleeve, and it's got, you know, folds on the edges, so it opens up, it unfolds into 4 circular pages, I guess you'll say, and the record just kind of sits in between some of those pages. So very interesting packaging. The album, not really my thing, but a very cool souvenir to have. And we have Barbara Jones Streisand. I don't think it's her first album, but it's an excellent album. It's got like 3 Carole King songs on here that she does, a couple of John Lennon songs. So even if you're not terribly fond of Streisand, I recommend picking this one up. It's great. We've got 10cc's Greatest Hits, and Music Plus. That was, it's still got the Music Plus sticker on here. That was a store that was half a mile's walk from my house down in California when I lived down there growing up. So yeah, I spent many of my first paychecks for my first job at Music Plus. And then you got to have Make It Big by Wham. At least I do. And then oh, you're gonna love this one. This is just so odd and bizarre. Yeah, I just can't describe it. Firm Believer, a complete exercise program featuring today's finest Christian music. Get it? Firm Believer, get it? Today and today's finest Christian music. Today being 1982. So yeah, it's just one of those ridiculous, bizarre albums. It was in my brother-in-law's and sister's collection. I have absolutely no idea why or how, but I couldn't not keep this. I mean, come on. And then apparently, I don't know if it was my brother-in-law, I think it might have been his mother, was apparently a big Herb Alpert fan. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass albums. So, and I have to admit, I've become quite fond of them as well. So yeah, I can never have too much Herb Alpert in my collection. And again, they were, you know, they vary considerably in condition, but hey, all the ones that I've played so far are playable. So, and then we've got a real classic here, Switched on Bach, by Walter Carlos, who would later become Wendy Carlos, a popular film composer. Yeah, classical music programmed on synthesizer. So it's excellent stuff. I mean, Walter Wendy Carlos was a real groundbreaker. So I'd recommend listening to this. This is fantastic. And I've got a handful of albums by Percy Faith and his orchestra. And again, this is another vertical gatefold. And my brother-in-law and sister had This Is Henry Mancini Volume 2 in their collection. So I decided to mosey down to the local store one day and look just for kicks to see if they had This Is Henry Mancini Volume 1, and they did. So I had to get it. Matching set. And most people who have Herb Alpert in their collection will also have albums by Sergio Mendes and Brazil 66. They kind of go hand in hand, so I have 3 albums of theirs in my collection. And again, these were from my brother-in-law and sister. And then you might have seen this one peeking out of the earlier picture that I showed you, the still image from that videotape. It's a song called Niki Nana, and it's by Yanni. Don't laugh. Yanni's early stuff actually had some life to it, but yet check out this song. I don't know what language it's sung in, but it's kind of it's got an African feel to it, and it's just excellent. It's very upbeat and bright and bouncy, and just, if you listen to one Yanni song, make it Niki Nana. Now we're getting into the soundtracks portion. I got Beverly Hills Cop. One of my favorite movies from when I was a little kid, The Black Hole. It was a Disney movie. Music by John Barry, who's more famous for the James Bond films. Got Close Encounters. And the soundtracks from the 2 Ewoks TV movies that were on American television back in the mid-'80s. It's a cool little collector's item here. And then one of the most underrated scores from one of the most acclaimed composers, the late James Horner, and his score for Krull. This was just absolutely fantastic. I love the movie, and I loved his score for it. It does not get nearly enough representation on Horner compilations. And the soundtrack from the original Zeffirelli film version of Romeo and Juliet. And my brother-in-law and sister had Superman the movie soundtrack in their collection. But I already had Superman 2 and Superman 3. And we have the soundtrack from Woodstock. Again, this is a double gatefold, and it's a triple album. This is very cool. And yeah, so that's all my my A to Z. Much like my CDs, I have all the vocal-based music, A to Z, then the instrumental-based music, A to Z, then soundtracks, and then up here I've got comedy and miscellaneous. So Stan Freberg, Spike Jones, Von Meter, who was a JFK impersonator. This album was done, this was, I believe, his only album before the death of Kennedy, after which his career understandably didn't go much further. We got some Bob Newhart here. And this one I picked up at my local store not too long ago. It's a 3-album set of Carl Weiner and Mel Brooks, the 2,000-Year-Old Man stuff. Still sealed in what I think is its original plastic. Haven't broken it open to listen to yet. And then I've also have to have some Alan Sherman in my collection. This one was from, I believe, my my folks. And then my brother-in-law and sister had this one in their collection. And we've got the Smothers Brothers, a couple of other albums. And Jonathan Winters, the late great Jonathan Winters. And then I have the first album And last album by Weird Al Yankovic. And this one was in my folks' collection as well. This is one of my absolute favorites, Comedy Caravan. It has Andy Griffith, who did a lot of folksy storytelling routines back in the 50s. Stan Freberg. And I found this one at the local store again. 25 Years of Recorded Comedy. It is a triple album, I believe, if memory serves. Yep, triple album. Triple gatefold. So yeah, Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, Lily Tomlin, Mike Nichols and Elaine May, Jonathan Winters, Stan Freberg, Cheech and Chong, Alan Sherman. So a whole bunch of people. And then some of the stuff I have from when I was a kid is still in here. The story record from the Black Hole. A record of Space 1999 stories. 3 records of Star Trek stories. Some of them are really good and some of them are absolute crap, but hey. It's Star Trek, I mean, come on. And an original Star Wars story, Rebel Mission to Ord Mantell. Then the story record from Tron. And then this was one of my sister's favorite records when she was a little tiny girl. A children's record, Peppino the Italian Mouse, by Lou Monte. And just a few of the 45 singles I have. One Night in Bangkok by Murray Head. Born in East LA by Cheech and Chong. And Valley Girl by Frank and Moon Zappa. So yeah, that kind of takes you through my record collection very briefly. Yeah, a lot of cool gems that I haven't had the chance to listen to yet, and but I've got to remedy that very, very soon in the coming days and weeks and months. So that's it from down here. Back to you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. That was fascinating. Isn't he amazing? Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little tour of my record collection, which I will be adding to slowly but surely over the next coming months and years. What are some of your favorite records? Let me know in the comments. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. And again, thank you very much for watching. And remember, life's too short to be a music snob.